Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first Lunch and Learn of 2021, destined to be the best year ever, at least compared to last year. And I'm so excited to have two guests today. And I have MC and I have Ebony. And MC is an author that has published several books with Girl Friday Productions. And Ebony is a new author that is just going through the process right now. So I thought it would be so fun to have these two fabulous, successful ladies get together and ask some questions. And I do have some guiding questions, but what I would love to do first was let's start with the new kid on the block. We're going to start with Ebony, and maybe you can introduce yourself, Ebony, what you do, and a little bit about your book.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here today. This is, I think, my first video, live, whatever it ends up being, of 2021. So I'm certainly glad to be here. Who I am, wow, what a question, which is probably why I wrote my book. I am a new author with Girl Friday. And my background is that I am a corporate leader. I'm actually a director of marketing for a corporation right now. And I'm also many other things as well. I'm a mother. I am an elder in a traditional community, Afro-Brazilian community, as well as have a wide background and love for Indigenous culture, and cultural traditions. And that's really what fueled me writing my book. So I could go on and on and on, about my background, and maybe we'll get into some of that today.
Yeah, and now tell us a little bit about the book that is going to be publishing in February, you said.
Absolutely. So the book is titled Leading Wise, subtitle Inspiration Reflections for Corporate Leaders. And this book was born of my love of Indigenous culture. It's interesting when I feel like almost as if I've led parallel lives at the same time, because I've been in corporate America for 30 years, close to 30 years. But I've also, during that same amount of time, immersed myself in study with traditional elders from traditional wisdom communities. And so both of those pieces of myself have informed each other and have converged upon each other to the point where I was learning things about myself and about my work and how I approached my work and how I approached leadership. And as I started to learn, I started to share with people, and people began to come to me to say, wow, I don't know how you did that. I don't know how this happened. How did you do that? And I realized that I had some wisdom and some information to share with people. And so I decided to put it all into a book. And this has been really a several years process as the book evolved into what it is today, which are these inspirational reflections and commentary about the purpose of our work and the purpose of leadership, and how we are to lead in a way that is enlightened and that actually helps and benefits other people, in addition to benefiting the bottom line.
Yeah, love it. And your book is so beautifully done, so well designed. It's just really an honor to work on the book. And so with that, I would love MC. You've been on a Lunch and Learn with me before, but tell us about your background and your books that you've done.
Sure, thanks, Georgie. I also wear different hats like Ebony. I am a practicing lawyer. I'm an appellate lawyer, so I write a lot in persuading courts to rule certain ways for my clients and for development of the law. But I also wear the hat of publisher and author. And I've published, of course, a lot of legal books with traditional publishers and chapters in them. But with Girl Friday, I've published 3 books in the last 2 years, 2 in a series, Mother's Thoughts for the Day, and this fall, another book, sort of branching off, different from that series, called Quotes on Character. And all of them are gift books. The first book won an IPPY award in the gift book category. And we are working on another adjunct to the Mother's Thoughts for the Day series, a guided journal that will also come out in February, Ebony, that's the plan, that will allow others to write similar inspiring notes and thoughts to their children, which is what the Mother's Thoughts for the Day series is from my mother's notes to me throughout my career as a lawyer. And the Quotes on Character book, interestingly enough, has some parallels to Ebony's book as well, in terms of it's another compilation of quotes based on character and leadership. So they're all organized around what I consider, essential components of leadership and from character itself to work, love, joy, belief, things like that. So there is definitely an overlap in that regard with Ebony's book.
Yeah. So Ebony, after hearing all that, I want to turn to you because the book isn't out yet. How's it going in the process? And I'd love to hear the good and the bad. Like, is it what you expected it would be? Is it easier? Is it worse?
Okay, easier or worse, I can't really say. What I will say it is a process. For sure, it is a process. Many people said to me, oh, you just write your book and then you just put it in this software and then you just upload it and do this. And what I found is that it's not quite so easy. The other thing that I found is that creatively speaking, I definitely am very much connected to the overall design of my book and the words in the book and how they're put together and crafted. I really feel like my book is, every author feels like their book is their baby. Because of the energy behind my book and the foundation of it, it's really an offering in many ways and a tribute to the communities that I've studied with and learned from. And so I wanted to make sure that it was treated with care. And so creatively speaking, that part of it was a process, but when it got clear for me, then that part of it was easier. And then all the logistics of actually getting it out into people's hands is the part that was a little trickier for me. So it's interesting because I thought I could do all this myself, and I found Girl Friday, and because I realized I needed help, I needed some support. So it's going. Is it going as I expected? Probably not. When I think about 2020 and the pandemic, and all the unrest that happened last year, racial injustice, all these things, they all played a part in me rethinking parts of my book, and even having the energy to continue to move on with the book as I processed everything that was going on for us in 2020. So my initial, I don't know if you remember, my initial goal was to have my book out last year. And with everything that was going on and all the additional work that I knew was needed, it didn't happen quite that way.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about 2021.
Yeah. So hearing all that, MC, can you relate to that? Is that like a similar experience that you had? Did it take longer? Was it faster, the production process?
No, not in my case. Even during COVID, we had a pretty strong sense of the design after the first book for Mother's Thoughts for the Day. So that went much more easily. And it seemed like both of my books publishing last year seemed like with the books I follow, like the intuition, each book has its own life and its own purpose in the world. And I just kind of follow the sense of when it should come out. And, you know, we have our schedule, but sometimes it just seems to be perfectly appropriate. So the first book came out just before Mother's Day, right as the pandemic lockdowns were happening, and people were wanting to connect with their families and not being able to see them. So it became wildly popular for Mother's Day because you couldn't see your mother in most cases, or mothers couldn't see their daughters. So so it gained like a whole new life from that. And then the character book, which recently came out, that one I almost didn't publish because I wasn't sure if it was the right time or who the audience might be, but that was the schedule. And I said, okay, I'm just going to do it. We're going to finish. I finish everything I start. So we're going to finish it. And it turns out that it is like insanely popular, and it was just the thing that people need to hear as they're going into a new year, like reflecting on what leadership lessons and leadership sort of inspiration they might need to get through the next year. It's also been like amazingly popular on LinkedIn. I mean, we can talk about promotion. I agree with Eboni that it's a journey. There are many steps in the journey. There are many steps in the journey to producing the book. And that is about 1/4 of the whole journey of the book, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff after that that you really don't think about, that is necessary to kind of get it out there. And you have to be exceedingly creative and figuring out ways to do that. And I think that is one thing that COVID has changed. You know, you're not going to go on a book tour. And so the most immediate thing was, you know, how do you promote a book when you can't, you know, do those things, and people aren't going to happen upon it in the bookstore and things like that. So, so I think COVID changed that promotion issue very much as well, and having to adapt to that. So I agree, there are many steps in the journey, but I hate to tell you, Eboni, but there's a whole lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's interesting. So you talked about, you know, kind of a book having a life of its own, and that's how I really see it, right? It's, you put the book out there, but then it doesn't go away. It's still living, and we still need to support it, and make sure that it has a good life, if you will. So I'm curious, you know, how you think about that when you think about promotion, and you talked about some creative ways of promoting. So what advice would you have, you know, for me, a new author? I don't have a huge list, but I do know the importance and the value of this book. So what are some tips to that I should be thinking about when I start to promote my own book?
Oh gosh, well, I think definitely be open-minded about different approaches, and I always think I think listening is important. Listening to people who read the book in the beginning, because I think that your sense of the life of the book is maybe very different from what it actually is when it comes out, and who it serves and how it serves people. I think, you know, Georgie had asked me before, what is like one of the things you're most proud of, you know, for the books. And I mean, certainly winning an award for the first one was, you know, affirming. But to me, it's the comments and the role that the books play in people's lives. I mean, if I can just change a few people's family relationships or help enhance a few people, or be there in a difficult time, and I've gotten a lot of notes like that, then I feel like at least some of the books have served their purpose. And so I pay attention to that. I think that's how the journal happened, actually, was that people who were reading the book said, oh, I wish I could do something like this for my child, but I'm just not that artistic, or I'm just not that, you know, committed to send something every day, or what have you, but I wish I could do that. And that they use the books to read to each other and to connect between, you know, different generations of families. And I thought, well, it seems like based on that input, that a guided journal to allow someone to do that based on the books and to have their own story that they share within the family is probably the next step that would kind of tie everything together. But if I hadn't listened to people, I never in a million years would have thought that that would be something valuable and like the extension of service. So I think listening both in terms of who's interested in the book as to where you would go to promote it, and who's the community for the book, and then also, is there something else that will happen after the book? The quotes on character book has led me to probably doing a podcast, because I think that some of the principles in there are appropriate for a podcast. I think the other thing is thinking about communication and publishing is very broad. I think there's just different mediums and different things are appropriate for different venues. So something might be appropriate for the book, but then maybe there's something else, whether it's a podcast or shorter articles or web or speaking. I think they're all of a piece. You just have to choose different things. So there may be more from your book that isn't a book as well. Like it's just one part of the process. As far as promoting, I will say that I've tried lots of things. So the first book I did nothing, because I didn't realize that there was really supposed to be something after the book came out. I was like, yay. But I did do word of mouth, and I kind of sent it to various people, and it did pretty well. And then it got the award, which helped the second book too. The second book sold quite a bit more because there were people who liked the first book and, bought that one. And then for the second one, though, we actually had something where we had the books on Instagram. We had, we have an Instagram account. We have a Facebook account. We're running ads on Facebook for several months, and did some like guest blogging on various things, and got it out there. But I can't really say that in that instance for that book that it ended up tying to any more sales or notoriety. Maybe it did, but I never saw it, or I couldn't trace it. And then the third book was the most interesting, the quotes on character one. I put it on LinkedIn. It was like right the time when everyone's on LinkedIn in business. And I always give part of my proceeds to various charities. So one of my friends who has a chef who has a great charity feeding children and families, I said, okay, on Giving Tuesday, every book I sell, we're gonna put a certain amount towards profits towards Bruno's charity. And I mean, that went like wildfire on LinkedIn. It was like everywhere, and sold a bunch of books. And then I just ended up carrying that over into December. Whatever was sold, we donated. So it was like amazingly popular. And then I had friends who got it, who are very active on LinkedIn, and they would post about it and put a picture of the book. It was like extremely organic. And I never thought that LinkedIn would be the place to promote it, but it just was the right place because of the leadership aspect. So I would say for you, definitely look at LinkedIn and think about ways to leverage that, both from your following and, trying to do more of that.
I'm actually amazed at LinkedIn. One of the reasons why it took me a while to get to this point is because what I learned is I was learning different tools along the way. And one of the things I learned in 2020 was about marketing myself on social media, doing video, figuring out what my social media platform is. And I worked with a coach to help me with that. And I kind of jumped in deep into the pool, was scared to death to be out there on LinkedIn, but got out on LinkedIn and just started creating content that is very much aligned with my book, even though the book isn't out. And I think toward the end of the year, I announced, hey, everybody, I wrote this book. And then it was delayed a little bit more. And what I found is people who I didn't know were paying attention to me started asking me, hey, so how's the book coming? When is the book coming out? We're waiting on the book. And I thought, wow, this is really great. And I also noticed that if I didn't post on LinkedIn for a while, just these leadership tips, you know, like I said, very much aligned with the principles in my book. People would ask me, hey, when you're going to post something else, I really love these posts that you're doing. And it's the people that I wouldn't necessarily think of. Mm-hmm. So, you know, when you talked about community, when you talked about promotion, it reminded me of building community. And is that something that just kind of happens, you know, organically when you just put yourself out there, like on LinkedIn, for example? Or is it something that you were intentional about building, you know, this community around your books?
No, I didn't. I mean, everything I do with the books is intuitive. I just have a sense of like, this is the time, or this is what I should do. Literally, for the LinkedIn thing that went like wildfire, I like woke up at 6:30 in the morning one day and went, oh, it's Giving Tuesday and it's my birthday. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something good, and I'm going to donate the profits from this, and I'm going to, you know, post about it on LinkedIn. And it just went nuts. So I basically go with my gut. You are much better because you should be. I mean, what I hear a lot is that the time to start promoting your book is like a year before the book comes out. Mm-hmm. So you are doing like textbook much better than I have, despite, you know, all of these other books I've done, which I just kind of go by the seat of my pants. You're much more organized, much better. I think doing what you did is really a great idea, because you associate your brand and yourself with leadership, and then you have your book about leadership, you know, coming out after that. And social media is all about giving first before asking. So if you've given a lot of tips for free before you'd ask someone to buy your book.
Yeah. So, I love that you said that, MC, because I certainly, I didn't know how to word this without sounding like, oh, those delays are okay, Eboni, don't be mad. But I mean, it's not ideal. I'm not happy that that's happened. But at the same time, and again, if you just take a cue from traditional publishing, which it has to change just because of the world today, they do promote books 6 months in advance. And it often reminds me of when you see teasers for, you know, movie trailers, and you're like, oh my gosh, it looks so good, I can't wait to see it. And they're like, coming fall 2025. And you're like, oh my God. And you get so mad. But what it does is, for me, at least as a consumer, that thirst for information. So then I'll go to your website. Now I'm going to sign up for your e-newsletter, and now I'm going to follow you on social media, because I'm like, oh my God, this book looks so amazing. It'd be great for me. It'd be great for my friend. I mean, that's what I love about your book, Eboni. I think it's such a gift, not only a gift to the world, but a gift. And it just seems like the timing for your book in particular is so great, because I do see a lot of these younger companies, and the CEOs are like, you know, 30 or something like that. And I think they're just more culturally aware, and they want to tap into their own personal histories that they may not have connected with in the past, or being open to others, which I know has happened a lot in 21, just a little bit more aware of everyone's journey. So I definitely think you're doing.
Yeah, I also think in the larger world, like there's, you know, 2020 was dark. I don't think that 2021, unfortunately, is going to be that much lighter. But I do think that you have to go through the darkness before you get to the light. And I think like beacons of light are very important. And I think that speaking for somewhere to go, for wisdom and for insights to navigate a really rocky time. And I think that the universe is having your book come out at just when it should come out, Eboni.
I certainly do believe that. I'm an Aries, so I'm always like, I got a plan. I got to go from A to B like that. Okay, we're done. And it didn't happen that way, which is fine, which is an interesting parallel to my book, because a lot of the lessons that I learned in my book, I learned because I experienced things. And that's the thing that I really love about Indigenous culture. It's very experiential. It's very much in the moment, and it's very, you use the word intuitive. It is that way, and it's very reflective. It's, oh, this thing happened, let me sit back and think about what that means. And I think when I think about 2020, I think a lot of people had questions, ended up having questions and investigating and trying to figure out why the world is the way that it is. You know, why a pandemic, and why are people behaving in a certain way, and why all these different activities that look like disruption. But actually, you know, my elders tell me, and I believe that it's all there to help us question. It's all there to help us go within and say, wow, how do I feel about this? And then what does it mean? And so I think you're absolutely right. The book is coming out at a really good time. You know, leadership in the United States is in the process of changing. Leadership in corporations, leaders are being tapped to look at the world differently, you know, to look at diversity and inclusion, and what do we think about that as a company. That's the exercise that many companies are going through now. And what my book does is it says, if you are a leader, what is your relationship with leadership? You know, what is your relationship with power, right? And how does that influence the way that you lead, and how are you serving the communities that you're leading? So you're right. It is, everything is certainly in the exact order that it should be in.
Right. Yes. Patience and having faith in things. That's part of the journey too. And maybe that's what you needed as you were editing the book as well.
Right. I have a question.
And then, oh yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? I want to know, like, as a new author, especially at the beginning of this process, and even now a little bit, you know, before I press the buttons and, you know, the book is out there on Amazon and all these places, did you have any fear around actually putting the book out there?
No. No, because I'm like you, everything I've ever done has been planned and, you know, all laid out. And I mean, we're both in business and leadership and all of that stuff. So, you know, everything's in order. All of these books I allowed to happen because I just had a feeling that they, you know, it was something that should be done, that it was something positive to share with the world. And I had no idea, you know, what its purpose was or who exactly the audience would be, but certainly the world could benefit from some goodness, you know, in over the last few years, and some positivity. And so I really did it on a wing and a prayer and some faith. I had a strong idea about what the books should look like in both cases. And Girl Friday was an excellent partner in making that, you know, come to fruition and to have some wonderful design ideas themselves. Yeah, I just kind of went with the gut feeling, and it's kind of like the book is a process. And I think that part of the process of doing the book is the growth that you get from doing the book as well. Mm-hmm. And, you know, where I started when I started doing the books and where I came out in the end is kind of different. Even in my professional career, I will go with my gut a lot more than I have in the past. And I don't have to see the end of the journey to embark on it. And the books have had positive impacts, but not in ways that I expected. There's a serendipitous aspect to every last one of the books so far. And I just follow that. It's had a really big impact, like I said, on how I make decisions as a leader. And also, it's okay being comfortable with not knowing like exactly where something's going to go, or to be open to something different happening than what you thought. Also, I think being much more attuned to the customers and the clients, you know, what are they interested in, like what works for them, and being sort of in tune with that and responsive to that in the next book or in the next thing that I'm doing. And that is a new experience for me in that regard, the listening part, without being so wholly committed to exactly, this is the vision I have and gosh darn it, that's what's going to happen. So yeah, it's been super interesting, but no, I did not have any fear because had faith that there was a reason that they were supposed to be out there. And if somebody made fun of me, that's fine.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
Yeah, so I wanted to give you guys a little insider information that well, I know you're just meeting right now, but you may not know about each other. So Ebony, my first time meeting MC was actually not for marketing at all. It was just helping with her website. So she had no marketing plan and figured it all out on her own. You, on the other hand, of course, I was lucky enough to meet you, and you worked with marketing and mapping out some different strategies and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you, Ebony, how was that? And was that with getting all that information from a, marketing department? Was it overload? Did you enjoy that process? Or was that something did it open up your mind to think, oh my gosh, I actually do have to do things? Because I think a lot of people that kind of, when you were talking about being nervous about the book coming out, I have had authors that are so focused on the book or so focused on the website, and then it's the night before the book is published and I'll get like a call that says, how are people actually finding my book? And I'm like, there it is. Like, so how has the process been for you, Ebony, about hearing from the marketing people and getting all that information?
I thought that process was great. And again, I didn't go from A to B. I kind of went back and forth and all over the place. So I had an understanding of what I needed to do, and I had done a lot of work around avatar. I had been working on my avatar for years, and so I understood my voice, and I understood the people that would best benefit from my book and needed to hear my voice. I knew that. And on the other side of that, marketing is this thing where it's abstract in some ways, but then there's a very logical piece to it and very data-driven part of it. And so I had kind of my inner voice telling me this was what I needed to do. This was the voice, and I had some people coming back to me and giving me some feedback, but I had no test market, if you will, because the book hadn't come out yet. I had some anecdotal information from what I'd done on social media. I'd had some conversations with good friends and coaches who know me well, who could give me some feedback and really be a mirror. But getting the data and having the market research part of it done was actually very empowering for me, because it confirmed two of the avatars that I had designed. And when the information was being presented to me, it was like my inner voice was like, ding, 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 ding. Yes, 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 that's it. But there was also another potential community that I hadn't thought of. In this particular case, in terms of sports coaches, that I thought, wow, that could be a potential audience for me, an audience that would have gone untapped because I would not have been targeting any content or any information toward them at all. And so it was very enlightening. It's enlightening to understand the competitive environment. What are other books doing? What are their price points? Like all this data that goes into trying to make sure that my book is properly positioned, right? So that we can optimize its success when it comes out. So I actually loved it. I love pouring into the data. And there are pieces of the data that aren't applicable, not just for this book, but it's applicable for a long time to come and will really inform some of the other products and services that I can release to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so great. Were you going to say something, MC?
Yeah, I think that I think the data is helpful, but I would reiterate, like, listening to people. It looks like you have a good combination of that, of sounding boards and listening as your book comes out, listening to people and how they respond to it. Because at least in my case, the data really only covered, like half the market. It just didn't quite cover where there was a real market, actually, because it wasn't totally obvious And it wasn't even obvious to me. So I think I would say data is good, and data is like, we're all about data these days, but I would be sure to temper that with, experiential things as well. Like, don't leave that at the door when you're doing the marketing. Ebony, I know you're good at that. You're into that. So pay attention to that as well as the data. Some can be reinforcing, and some things can lead you in a different direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really good to be flexible in this process. And so that has been, you kind of touched on that a little bit, MC, being flexible and not being so tied into, it has to look this way, it has to be this way, but to recognize that it is the journey. And so on the journey, we'll continue to get additional data points, we'll continue to get additional insights that we can decide, how to incorporate.
Yeah, I love that. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is that you were talking about Ebony having control over the book. It was so important to you. I think especially when you are representing a group of people, you want it to be factual and accurate, and you don't want any publisher changing that. We had a different author that she was writing about Hawaiian history, and she was not Hawaiian. So it was very important for her to respect that community, and she had consultants and all that. So she didn't want to give up creative control. So that's one reason why she came to Girl Friday. But what I thought was interesting about you is when you and I first started talking at the beginning, you were so open about the title of your book, which you ended up changing. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because some people be like, I'm not changing my title. Like that's a big deal. That's renaming the baby.
So what is interesting is that I had the book written a while ago and I didn't know what to call it. So for a long time, I was going through this process. I mean, I was still writing my book, right? Because I didn't have a title. And I would go into meditation, I would do research. I mean, I did all these different things just to try to figure out what is the name, what is your name? Book, what is your name? And what I did is I started to learn some of the other aspects. I said, like, okay, let me just let it cool. You know how you write and then you let it cool. And I went off and I learned other things that I needed to know about, publishing a book. And I talked with some friends who gave me some insights. They read the book and they were like, and I had given them like 10 different options to choose from, and ended up with one that was long. I mean, it was actually to the point where sometimes I couldn't even remember the name. Like I had to look on the paper, right? It was a long name. And while it spoke to, for me, it spoke to the content of the book, I don't know that it always resonated. And what I understand is when people look at the cover of a book, it's almost like when you meet a person, we make certain judgments about each other in less than 5 seconds. And a book cover is very similar. And so I think we had a conversation, and then I had a conversation with a coach that I was working with, and I told her the name of the book, and she said, I don't know what that means. I don't know what you're selling, right? And so what I was getting is mixed reactions, right? For some people, it was like, oh yeah, I like it. But other people, it was like, I'm not really, it's not clear for me. And so I stepped back and said, okay, let me think about this a little bit more and think about what it is that I'm really trying to do. And that's how I got to this title, Leading Wise. And what's interesting is there was no effort involved. It just came, right? It just came. And the subtitle is still the same, Inspirational Reflections for Corporate Leaders, but now it's a 2-word title as opposed to like a 6-word title. That wasn't easy to say. And Leading Wise has also become part of how I'll promote the book as well. It will make promotion of the book easier as well. And once I recognized that was the name, it kind of happened in conjunction with some things I was doing on social media. So on LinkedIn, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see I have now posts that say wise leaders, XYZ, right? Wise leaders listen, wise leaders believe. And so it was when that campaign came to me and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, leading wise, that's what it should be. So it was a process. It was a journey. And you're right. Most people are like, I'm not changing the name of my book. And actually my coach, she told me, she was like, okay, I know you're not going to change the name of your book. And I haven't even told her. So I have to send this to her. I haven't told her. So kind of like you were saying, MC, when you're walking on this path, the path continues, the journey continues. And I've learned at this point, I've learned enough to be flexible to move and to really listen deeply. That's what my book is about. It's about reflection, right? There's somebody's coming to me with some information, some data that wasn't my original vision. Is this an opportunity to shift my perspective, to invite that in, or do I remain on the path that I was on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, ladies, I have so enjoyed talking to both of you. It's always great to see your faces. It's great to see you again, Eboni. I know it's been some time. So I so thank you. I'm very excited for your book to come out in February, and MC, the journal, which is so great, which coincidentally, when I first started talking with Eboni, I was like, this is a journal. This is a journal too, that people just have in their desks. And we were like, yes. So maybe in the future, if you start that podcast, MC, then here's your first guest right here.
I feel like MC and I were going to do some things together. I can see that.
Yeah. I know. I can see it. Georgie's the matchmaker once again. And I think Georgie goes with her intuition as well. Because there are sometimes things that she doesn't even know in particular, but she's like, you know what? I think this would work out. And, Georgie's wise. So there you go.
Well, thank you. I feel like that's debatable, but I appreciate the endorsement. So thank you so much for your time, ladies. Happy 2021 for real. Like, I'm so excited to see that calendar flip. And I look forward to working with both of you in the future. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy 2021.
Thank you, Georgie and Eboni. Thank you.